You ever hear something so simple, so honest, it stops the whole dang room cold? That's what happened on a rainy Tuesday afternoon in Oakwood, in a courtroom that smelled like old wood and bad coffee. Folks were bored, half listening, scribbling notes, checking their watches. Just another hearing, nothing special. Until a little voice, clear as a bell, cut through all the noise and nonsense. But first, leave a comment below to let us know where you are watching from. And if you like fascinating stories like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow we have another incredible story, and there are many surprises waiting for you in the next parts. It's him, Mom. 3 words, barely a whisper, but loud enough to slap the air out of the room. Heads turned, eyes blinked, and Officer Thomas Reeves, decorated cop, 15 years on the force, looked like someone had poured ice water down his back. The man went pale, and not the kind of pale you get from a cold. No, this was the kind that hits when your past walks in wearing Oshkosh bagosh and holding a juice box. Tanya Wilson, 20, a single mama, did what any embarrassed parent would do. She pulled her son into her lap, gave him the whisper growl every mama knows. Shh! Isaiah! We don't point at people. But Isaiah wasn't moving. His little hand stayed up, his finger firm, like it was wired to truth. It's him, Mommy, he said louder. The bad man from Grandma's house. Now let me pause right there. See that right there? That was the moment the room stopped pretending, because a toddler saying something strange, that's normal. But a toddler pointing at a cop and calling him out by memory, that hits different. That sticks. Officer Reeves didn't speak. Didn't smile. Didn't blink. His hand was gripping his badge like it might float away if he let go, and the badge, folks, it was shaking. Just like his fingers. Judge Wilson banged his gavel, more annoyed than alarmed. "Court is in session!" he snapped. But even he couldn't keep his eyes off the kid, or the cop. That's when District Attorney Eleanor Hayes lifted her head. She wasn't the emotional type. 15 years in prosecution had burned that clean out. But what she saw on Reeves' face, that wasn't embarrassment. That wasn't irritation. That was fear. Now, here's where it starts to cook. Tanya had brought Isaiah with her because she couldn't find nobody to watch him. She was just there to testify in a gas station robbery. Something that happened 6 months back. 2 masked guys, fast getaway, nothing personal, no connection to Reeves. At least, not on paper. But Isaiah's got a memory. And that cop's got a limp? That's what made Hayes sit up straighter. See the way Officer Reeves walked? Uneven, subtle, but there. Like something in the right knee never quite healed. And Isaiah? When Hayes asked Tanya afterward, quietly, casually, if her son had ever seen that officer before, Tanya said no. But then she remembered. Her mom's house. The mugging. The night Isaiah cried so hard he hiccuped in his sleep. That night. "Where's your mom live?" Hayes asked. "Eldridge Grove," Tanya said. Hayes froze. That's across town, same neighborhood, same time frame, same limp. Now we're out of coincidence territory. Hayes didn't say much more, just nodded, said thank you, and turned away. But her eyes, they were already 5 moves ahead. She didn't see a cop anymore. She saw a suspect. She saw a thread worth pulling. 10 minutes later, Judge Wilson called a recess, and Officer Reeves was invited into chambers. No fuss, no scene, but what most folks missed, what Isaiah didn't miss, were the 2 suits who slipped in behind him. They didn't carry clipboards. They carried clearance badges and federal eyes. And that's when you realize this wasn't just a courtroom disruption. This was a fuse. And a little boy lit it, just by saying what grown folks were too scared or too blind to see. So now the question ain't, what did Isaiah see? The question is, why did that truth make a grown man with a badge almost drop it? Stick around. What comes next? It ain't routine anymore. Gallery Drive. Some kids draw dinosaurs. Isaiah? He drew memories. real ones. The kind that don't show up in a coloring book but stick in your gut like a bad dream. After court, Tanya couldn't shake what her son said. The bad man from Grandma's house. It echoed in her chest like church bells. Then came the call from D.A. Hayes telling her to bring Isaiah to the office, tonight. That's when Tanya found herself in a quiet room with not just Hayes, but a retired internal affairs man named Marcus Johnson. His eyes told her he wasn't here for pleasantries. Marcus had been connecting dots for years. Elderly Black and Latino folks getting robbed in their homes, same districts, same time of month, always cash heavy. And always the same set of cops responding first. Including one, Officer Thomas Reeves. Marcus laid it out. These weren't random street crimes. This was a pattern, an operation. Cops casing the scene during official calls, then coming back masked to rob folks blind. They chose their victims carefully. Old, alone, unlikely to fight back. And every time they'd show up first on scene, afterward, pretending to help, pretending to care. Tanya's stomach dropped. Her mama had been one of them. 72 years old, mugged in her kitchen, too scared to sleep for weeks. And the more she thought about that limp Isaiah mentioned, the more her brain refused to call it coincidence. It was Reeves. It had to be. Then came Dr. Amara Davis, a forensic child psychologist. Calm, clear-eyed, gentle with Isaiah. She didn't ask questions the usual way. She brought out toys, let Isaiah tell his story on his terms, and Isaiah, bless his tiny heart, did just that, picked up a toy cop and made it limp, slammed it on the table, changed his voice to a growl. "He yelled at Grandma," he said, "and hit her 'cause she didn't give him the money fast enough." Tanya nearly choked. She'd never heard that part before. Not from Isaiah, not from anyone, and now she was hearing it like a punch to the ribs, straight from her baby's mouth. Hayes and Marcus went into overdrive. Marcus had already started tracking the officers' finances, cash deposits that lined up perfectly with the robberies, but it wasn't enough. They needed hard proof, physical evidence. And that's when Isaiah, still fiddling with his toys, casually dropped a bomb. "The bad man dropped something shiny," he said, "like what he had on today." Hayes blinked. "You mean the badge?" Isaiah nodded. Said it rolled behind the couch. That was it. That was the moment everything clicked. That badge wasn't just metal. It was the missing link, the thing that could burn the whole lie to the ground. Tanya confirmed her mom still lived in the same house. No, it hadn't been searched properly. Cops brushed it off like a petty break-in, but now, that house was ground zero. Hayes didn't waste a second. "We go now," she said. "If that badge is still there, we've got ourselves a case nobody can ignore." The air in the room changed. It wasn't theory anymore. It wasn't suspicion. It was real. And it was dangerous. Tanya looked at Isaiah, who was back to his blocks like none of this mattered. But the truth was, it all started with him. And if that shiny thing was still where he said it was, Oakwood was about to wake up. You ever lose your keys and find your whole future instead? That's kind of what happened next. At 5:30 in the morning, Tanya's mama was still in her nightgown, holding a cup of half-warm coffee, when federal agents knocked on her door. Not local PD, not the same old boys' club. These were folks who didn't ask for permission. They showed her the warrant and told her gently, "Ma'am, we believe something important might still be inside your house." She just nodded and moved aside. She didn't know what they were looking for. Not yet. But Isaiah did. He was already tugging on Dr. Davis's sleeve, saying, "By the couch." It made a clink sound. The forensic team combed every corner of that little home like it was a museum, pulled cushions, lifted rugs, even pried open the kitchen cabinets. But after 2 hours of nothing but dust and frustration, even Marcus Johnson started looking like the wind had gone out of him. "Maybe it's gone," someone muttered. "Maybe Reeves came back and cleaned it up." Hayes didn't respond. She was staring at Isaiah, who sat on the floor eating cereal, completely unfazed. When the grown-ups started to give up, that little boy got up, walked over to the wall behind the couch and said, "Right here." It made a noise when it fell. Now let me tell you something. When a 3-year-old talks like that, like his memories playing in high def, you listen. One of the agents brought over a fiber optic camera, the kind that looks through tiny cracks. Slipped it behind the baseboard, guided it slow. Everyone leaned in. The room got so quiet, even the creak of the couch felt loud. And then, clear as daylight on the screen, there it was, a badge. Not just any badge, Officer Thomas Reeves' badge. Personalized. Initials engraved on the back, still shiny, still loud. It hadn't just fallen. It had waited for the right eyes, for the right child, for the right day. Hayes grabbed the tweezers herself, sealed it in a bag like it was gold. Marcus looked like he might cry, but he didn't. Just exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for 5 years. That badge wasn't just proof. It was betrayal. See? Badges don't just disappear. They don't wander off crime scenes unless someone helps them walk. And that badge? It had been logged into evidence after the mugging, then wiped from the record, which meant somebody in that department had scrubbed it clean, which meant Reeves wasn't working alone, which meant the cover-up didn't stop at one man's limp. While all this was happening across town, the chief of police was scribbling out a transfer order in his office like he was signing a birthday card. Officer Reeves' destination, a sleepy little station near the Mexican border. Effective in 72 hours. No questions, no noise, just enough time to vanish before the whole mess hit the fan. He thought he was being slick, but someone just down the hall, someone quiet, someone small, was about to make the loudest call of their life. Secretary who'd seen too much, stayed silent too long. Her hand hovered over the phone. The badge had spoken. And now it was her turn. You ever sit quiet for 20 years, then snap 'cause you finally had enough? That was Sandra Pearson. She typed up every lie Chief Rivera ever fed the public, filed every missing report that should have been evidence, and made coffee for men who never saw her as more than background noise. But on that Thursday morning, as Rivera slammed his door and muttered about that damn kid ruining everything, something in Sandra broke clean. It wasn't just what he said, it was how he said it. Not scared, not sorry, just angry his dirty little empire had sprung a leak. One kid, he said, pacing in his office. One kid's gonna undo 12 years of work. Over a badge? I built this thing. Sandra didn't slam drawers, didn't cry, didn't even sigh. She just reached into the back of her desk drawer and pulled out a sticky note she hadn't looked at in years. Faded numbers written in her own shaky handwriting. The FBI tip line. She'd saved it back when she first realized something ugly was brewing in Oakwood PD. But fear had kept her frozen. Not today. Today, she dialed. "This is Sandra Pearson," she said, voice calm, clear. "I work for Chief Rivera. I have information you need to hear." She gave them the badge story, the transfer order, the pattern, the whispers she wasn't supposed to hear. And when she hung up, she didn't feel scared. She felt clean. The media didn't wait. Word got out before lunch. 3-year-old's testimony sparks federal probe, one headline read. By 2 p.m., the Oakwood Herald was flooded with anonymous tips, old case files and victims long silenced now speaking up. By 3 p.m., the national networks were sniffing around. And by 4 p.m., Oakwood wasn't just a town, it was a headline. Reeves' name was trending for all the wrong reasons, and he knew it. That night, in a back booth of a rundown bar, he was nursing his 4th whiskey, hands shaking, voice cracking. "It's just a kid," he said to the other officers huddled around him. "They won't believe him. He's 3. They'll believe us." But Peterson, the oldest of the crew, wasn't buying it. "You didn't see the feds in court?" he snapped. "You didn't feel that shift?" Another officer chimed in. "Marcus Johnson's involved. Hayes is too deep to let this go. We're not just in trouble. We're exposed." Reeves laughed, but it was hollow, forced. "Rivera's got us. He's got strings. We've survived worse." But even as he said it, his fingers twitched like they were trying to run before his feet could. The bartender refilled their glasses without a word. He'd seen panic before. This was something uglier. Desperation pretending to be tough. Then it happened. No warning, no countdown. The FBI moved like thunder. That same evening, while Reeves was halfway through a sentence about just laying low, his burner phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. Peterson. Then another call, unknown, then pounding. Not in his head, on his front door. Outside, black SUVs boxed in his car. Inside, his hallway filled with blue windbreakers and badges that didn't ask twice. Across town, at an abandoned warehouse where the officers had planned to meet, a convoy of federal cars blocked every exit. Peterson saw them too late. Slammed the brakes, tried to U-turn, but red and blue lit up the inside of his windshield, like it was Christmas and Judgment Day rolled into one. And back in Oakwood, in a child-friendly room inside the courthouse, Isaiah Carter was adjusting his tiny bow tie. He didn't understand everything that was happening, didn't know his name was now in headlines, but he did know one thing. Grown-ups were listening. For the first time, the words of a black child weren't being dismissed, corrected, or ignored. Dr. Davis sat beside him, calm as ever, voice soft. "You just tell the truth, sweetie. That's all you ever have to do." Isaiah nodded. A camera in the corner blinked red. Record light on. The door clicked closed. The world leaned in, and a little boy opened his mouth again. This time, not just a courtroom, but the entire country was listening. There's courtroom silence, and then there's the kind that hits when a 3-year-old tells the truth better than any grown man ever could. Isaiah didn't flinch, didn't stammer, didn't look confused. He sat in that special little chair with his feet swinging and his voice steady. When the child psychologist gently asked him what he remembered, he didn't hesitate. He yelled at Grandma. He made his leg go like this, he said, mimicking the limp. Had the shiny thing, and it fell. There was no drama in his voice, no fear, just memory, pure and unfiltered. And in that moment, every adult in that room, every suit, every badge, every doubter went quiet. District Attorney Hayes took it from there. Not a single paper fumbled, not a single sentence wasted. She walked the jury through every thread like she was stitching up a wound that had festered too long. Badge found behind the couch, bank deposits made within 48 hours of each robbery, same pattern, same group of officers, victims, mostly elderly, mostly poor, mostly ignored, finally brave enough to speak after years of being scared into silence. There were names, dates, calls logged, evidence buried and now dug up. And at the center of it all, a toddler who didn't know how to lie but sure as hell knew how to see. When the verdict came in, the judge didn't need to raise her voice. Guilty on all counts. That was it. No one moved at first. It was like the whole room had to inhale before it could believe. Then it started. Soft clapping from the second row, an elderly woman in a church hat, then someone else, and then everyone. A standing ovation in a courtroom that had seen more defeat than justice. Tanya held Isaiah close, tears running down her cheeks, but not from fear this time, from something closer to peace. For the first time in years, the system had listened. Not just heard, but listened. They walked out of that courthouse like heroes, even if they didn't feel like it. Reporters shouted questions. Microphones swung too close. Tanya didn't answer most of them. She was too busy holding her son's hand. But the look in her eyes, that said enough. It said, "We're still standing." Behind them, the numbers started to stack. 50 officers fired, 11 charged and sentenced. $12 million seized from accounts stashed in the Bahamas, in Vegas, in places nobody earning a cop's salary had any business banking in. The corruption wasn't just deep, it was wide. And now it was burning down. 6 months passed like a blink. Tanya kept her head low back at her job, trying to build something steady for Isaiah. But then came the letter. Gold seal. Thick envelope. She opened it slow, thinking maybe it was just more legal noise, but it wasn't. It was an invitation, formal, official. She was being asked to attend the ribbon-cutting ceremony for a brand new justice center named after her son, the Isaiah Center for Community Accountability. She stared at the words like they couldn't possibly be real. And the last line? Isaiah Carter will be honored with the inaugural ribbon cut. She looked up, and there he was, sitting on the floor with toy scissors in hand, like the universe had already handed him the ribbon, and he was just waiting to make it count. You ever see a kid grow up in front of your eyes? That's Isaiah. And his world? It bloomed like spring after a long, mean winter. The boy who once pointed a finger in court with peanut butter on his chin now stood in a pressed little suit, smiling shy, holding a pair of plastic scissors too big for his hands. The crowd cheered as he snipped the ribbon in front of the brand new building that would change how justice worked in Oakwood. The sign above read, "The Isaiah Center for Community Accountability." The folks who once ignored neighborhoods like his were now asking for input. And it all started because a toddler said, "It's him." The Isaiah law passed just 3 months after the trial. No more police investigating their own buddies. From now on, every case involving minorities got flagged for independent review. All officers were required to wear body cameras that streamed to a civilian oversight board, and the city rolled out an AI system that flagged patterns of abuse the old boys never thought anyone would catch. Isaiah didn't know what legislation meant, but he knew his name got said a lot on the news. And whenever someone on the screen looked mad about it, Tanya would just smile and say, "That's what real change looks like, baby. It makes the right people clap and the wrong ones sweat." Tanya didn't just sit back and watch the wave roll in, she became part of it. Hayes offered her a role leading Oakwood's first community liaison program. Her job? Train officers to actually talk to people instead of barking orders. She helped families understand their rights, helped survivors find their voices. And every Friday she spoke at the academy, telling young recruits that real strength isn't about force, it's about knowing when not to use it. Across town, Sandra Pearson was now running the state's whistleblower protection office. She said she was done typing lies for men with fake smiles. Now, she picked up the phone when someone said, "I saw something, but I'm scared to tell." Marcus Johnson, retired, tired, always watching, was finally getting credit for the years he'd been called paranoid. They pinned the Civilian Medal of Honor on his chest in a packed auditorium. He didn't cry, but his hands shook when he saluted. Then there was Dr. Amara Davis, whose book, The Eyes That Don't Lie, hit bestseller lists within weeks. She'd written about Isaiah, about how children see things we ignore. She said, "Adults filter everything through fear, ego, and power. Kids just tell you what they saw." Her book toured the country, and every time she spoke, someone in the audience cried, not because they were sad, but because they remembered what truth felt like before the world told them to shut up. And Isaiah, he didn't want fame. Didn't care much about the news. One morning his teacher asked what he wanted to be when he grew up. He shrugged, then said, "I want to be a judge, so everyone gets treated fair." The class clapped. The teacher blinked fast to hold back tears. And Tanya? She just exhaled, slow, like her lungs were finally working right for the first time in years. Her boy didn't want revenge. He wanted balance. He wanted fairness. That's the kind of kid who doesn't just survive injustice, he rewrites the rules for it. But while life was blooming on one side of town, things were shriveling on the other. In a federal penitentiary hours away, 2 men watched Isaiah's ribbon-cutting ceremony on a dusty TV in the common area. Rivera and Reeves, sitting in state-issued jumpsuits, their empire reduced to old memories and steel walls. "Turn that off," Rivera grumbled. "White roots showing under what used to be a flawless dye job, little punk," Reeves muttered, watching Isaiah wave at the camera with a plastic badge pinned to his chest. Their fall wasn't just legal, it was personal. They hadn't just lost their jobs, they'd lost the illusion that power made them untouchable. Turns out, Isaiah's case cracked more than they ever expected. With the badge found and Sandra's testimony and a mountain of digital trails, the feds uncovered a decade-long racket targeting elderly, low-income residents, mostly Black and Latino. 50 officers dismissed, 11 imprisoned, and $12 million, 0 cents, scraped out of offshore accounts now sitting in a victim compensation fund. Tanya's mother testified before Congress and helped push through the Vulnerable Communities Act. She said, "I might be old, but I ain't blind, and I ain't scared anymore." Her voice shook Capitol Hill. Marcus was invited to lead the Police Reform Commission. People who once called him a problem now called him a pioneer. Isaiah grew, slowly but surely, surrounded by truth-tellers and system changers. He still liked juice boxes and cartoons, but he also understood that fairness wasn't automatic. It was something you had to fight for, and maybe, just maybe, forgive for. Eventually. One afternoon, Tanya watched him playing in the front yard with another little boy, the son of a reformed officer who now worked side by side with her at the community center. The kids didn't care about last names or legacies. They just laughed and chased butterflies, both of them unaware of the barriers they'd already broken just by being friends. And Tanya? She stood on the porch, arms crossed, heart full. She knew justice wasn't just about putting the bad guys behind bars. It was about building a world where no kid had to carry the weight of courage so young. A world where pointing at the truth didn't make you a target, it made you a hero. Isaiah reminded her that sometimes the loudest revolutions come from the softest voices, and in a world built on fear, it was his innocence that cracked the armor. It was his clarity that made the blind finally see. Because when a child speaks truth, you don't silence him, you listen. And when he points a finger, you follow it, even if it leads to the very system meant to protect you, especially then. And, if you're lucky, really lucky, that child grows up not just wanting to fix what's broken, but making sure it stays fixed. Isaiah did that, without even knowing it, and Oakwood would never be the same. Leave a comment below to let us know where you are watching from, and if you like fascinating stories like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button because tomorrow we have another incredible story and there are many surprises waiting for you in the next parts.